All right, I think we're ready to get going. I doubt we'll need the full hour for this, so I'm happy to take questions at any moment. Feel free to use either the chat function or the Q&A function. I'll do my best to answer questions as they trickle in, but in case something is going to be answered later, I may just hold off because it may be coming up in an upcoming slide. So without further ado, hello, everybody. Welcome. Super glad to have you here. Super enthusiastic for this year's hackathon. My name is Mohanad Hussain. I am the technical project manager for SIIM's hackathon, and it's my absolute pleasure today to give you the hackathon orientation. Whether you're new to the hackathon or is it your first year, hopefully this will tell you everything you need to know about how the hackathon works and what to expect. So first things first, in case you're new to SIIM, welcome. SIIM is an organization that is focused in collaboration and advancement of patient care. So SIIM stands for Society of Imaging Informatics in Medicine. You're going to find SIIM members to be a unique blend of multiple personas like clinicians, data scientists, developers, etc., that all come together with the goal of trying to improve patient care. That's really the bottom line of what we try to do. The good news is, with SIIM members being laser focused on that mission, you're going to find that SIIM members are extremely welcoming and approachable. And don't take my word for it, try it yourself. It's something that we hear often from people who are new. They come in, they say, you have such a nice community here. We indeed do. We're very lucky. Another cool thing about SIIM is that if you're a student, and the definition of student within SIIM is also pretty flexible. So for example, perhaps you're a radiology resident or any other type of resident, or you're a PhD student, so you don't have to be necessarily an undergrad, you would actually get a free membership. And if you decided to attend the annual meeting, which is coming up pretty soon, you'd also get free annual meeting registration. So it's very, very generous package, because SIIM is, again, trying to bring in more people, hoping to get people interested in this domain of imaging informatics. Now, regardless of whether you qualify for the free membership, I should remind you that the hackathon is always 100% free to participate for everybody. So it doesn't matter what you are, what you do, it's always free to be part of the hackathon. Another thing that's important, both to SIIM and the SIIM hackathon, is the networking. And this is not networking in the sleazy sense of you're going out of your way to connect with people for career advancement. This is actually networking because you're rubbing shoulders with people who are thought leaders, and you're actually getting to talk about important problems, and everybody is welcoming and receptive to connecting. Now, it goes without saying, the hackathon this year is virtual, or sorry, I should say hybrid, but of course we highly encourage everybody to attend the SIIM annual meeting, which is coming up in a few weeks, in person, if at all possible. It's an experience that I myself wouldn't pass on, and I highly recommend you do the same. What about the SIIM hackathon? So I generally divide this into 3 sections. What we bring to the table is we have a bunch of servers and APIs available for you in the cloud. We feature a number of things. The highlights here are FHIR Release 4. And in case anybody is wondering, yes, we're aware that Release 5 just came out, but it's just too new, too soon for us to actually get started on Release 5. Hopefully that'll be something for next year. DICOM Web is, of course, another big one. And then IHE-SOL is a standard that we've been trying to push for in past years. Now, our servers and APIs are live 24/7, 365. So they're available for you year-round. Even though the hackathon event is only happening now, these servers are available at any time. So maybe you put together a prototype now and you want to be able to show it to people in a couple of months from now, it's still going to work. Those servers and APIs do require a valid API key to use. It's just so we want to control who accesses them, so we reduce opportunities for abuse, but otherwise these API keys are completely free. We'll cover how you can get one of these if you don't have one already in this presentation. Now, next thing we bring to the table is our data set, and we're very proud of the data set we put. It's not the world's biggest data set by any stretch of imaginations, but it's a data set where I usually like to describe as quality over quantity. So what's cool about this data set is it contains 7 patient personas. The data in that data set is real life like, It's actually a data set that was put together by volunteer clinicians, like radiologists, that brings together clinical fire data that you normally find in the EMR, and stitches them with images. So it's basically living the dream of having the fully integrated image-enabled patient record. You've got everything at your fingertip, and everything connects, and everything feels realistic. It's not just totally fictional, random stuff that doesn't make clinical sense. Our data set actually makes perfect clinical sense. Well, maybe not perfect, but pretty close. I'm also proud to say that this year we've been working on expanding the data set, and we now have images from multiple ologies. If that doesn't mean much to you, I'll translate that in more understandable terms. So we have images from beyond just radiology. We have images from other specialties, and that's something that I'll cover in more detail. Now, I should say that our servers will also allow you to upload your own data to any of these APIs, Fire, DICOM Web, etc. However, keep in mind that just to keep the servers sanitized and running in optimal conditions, what we do is we reset them every night at 3 a.m. Eastern. So if you upload something now, you may not find it there tomorrow because of that nightly reset, but nothing stops you from re-uploading it again tomorrow. We're also very, very proud of the community we've built around the hackathon. I cannot state this enough. It's really a nice community. So over the years, we built these 5-minute start guides that take you from knowing nothing about Fire to being able to do basic things in Fire, or DICOM Web, or SOAL, and so on and so forth. We have, beyond the basic documentation, we have even more documentation for some more advanced use cases and other thought-provoking things, and I'll cover that in more details. We also provide mentors. We provide 2 types of mentors, as you'll see later in this presentation, some with technical expertise and some with general domain expertise, so imaging informatics expertise. And of course, our community uses live chat and brainstorming sessions. So we use Slack and we use some Zoom calls to make sure that we stay in touch, and anybody who becomes blocked can be easily unblocked and find solutions to their problems. I see a number of people have joined us. If you've not heard my announcements before, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm happy to take questions at any time. Feel free to put your questions either in the question and answer feature in Zoom, or use the chat, and I'll try and address questions as they come in. This slide is actually pretty old. One of these days I'll get to updating it, but really it just represents the general concept of what we're trying to convey with the SIIM dataset. So in this case, you see the 5 patient personas. These are the original. By now we have 7, and we might be growing into more pretty soon. You have a sample of the exams we have for each one of the patients, and as well as a sample of some of the EMR type of Fire data. So this kind of just helps you understand under the hood from a technical point of view what our data set looks like. So every year we try and keep the hackathon exciting and interesting. And every year we try new things to try different variations of what goes into the hackathon and try and make it better for everybody. So 2023, this is what we've got for you, and I'll elaborate on each one of these. So the first thing is, this is the very first time we're doing a hybrid hackathon. The hackathon for the longest time used to be purely in person, meaning you could only attend the hackathon if you were attending the SIIM conference. And then with COVID, we went virtual, and we remained virtual up until last year, until we got told, hey, we missed the energy you guys bring to the annual meeting. Can you please bring back the hackathon? At that point, we were actually torn, because there was a really nice advantage to having a virtual hackathon, allowing people to participate from anywhere in the world, regardless of their financial status. But then the flip side is, yes, we also wanted to bring it to the annual meeting. So it's a hybrid format, meaning you can fully participate virtually and fully remotely. You're not required to be present in person for anything. However, if you are going to be at SIIM, then we've got a bunch of cool activities that you could participate in. And again, we hope that you consider coming to SIIM. We'd absolutely love to see you in person. One item we also got as feedback is previous hackathons ran for 2.5, maybe 3 days at most. And for us, the whole purpose of the hackathon is less so about competition and more about education, collaboration, and networking. And we wanted to emphasize that the hackathon was something you could do while still working, studying, looking after your family, etc. So instead of it being 2.5 to 3 days, this year it's about 9.5 days. It's a pretty large increase. Again, emphasizing the point that this is a hackathon you could do if you can spare an hour or two a day, and you can still do something really cool. We've got some cool stuff also happening. So we've got a social media badge that we're hoping each one of you will use to brag about participating in this hackathon, whether you're on LinkedIn or Twitter or something else. Please help us spread the word. If you happen to win one of the prizes we have at the hackathon, then we have winner e-badges. So these are badges that you could apply to your LinkedIn profile that will be permanently displayed on your LinkedIn profile as an achievement. So kind of like a certification type of badge. This year, for the first time ever, we've always ran a very casual hackathon. We don't require people to do anything in particular to show that they're coming to the hackathon, or even tell us in advance what their intentions are for what they want to do this year. But this year, we're trying a mixture of that ultimate freedom, but also a little bit of structure. So we've had a form put together for idea and team curation. And I'll be showing this form later today. We've had some pretty amazing submissions of cool ideas that people want to build. Some of these ideas have teams formed around them. You can still join these teams if you wanted to. Some of these ideas are awaiting more team members, so maybe something catches your eye and you want to join forces with somebody else. Remember, this hackathon is all about collaboration, networking, and learning. So you're more than welcome to be in more than one team. You don't have to choose one team. If you're a mentor or a judge, we also did not stop you from joining forces with a team. Of course, if you're a judge, we still expect you to be objective as far as voting for your favorites, but the purpose here is not competition. Another thing I mentioned earlier is that our data set has been growing. So we are very proud to say that we have these new ologies. I could tell you that as of today, we've integrated samples from radiation therapy and dentistry cone beam CTs. We are, as we speak, working on integrating 3 more specialties: dermatology, pathology, and ophthalmology. We hope to have all of these ready in the next couple of weeks, so they're ready in time for the hackathon. And these samples have already existed on the hackathon server, but they were standalone. What we're trying to do this year is we're actually integrating them into the SIIM hackathon dataset, meaning that they're going to be part of a patient persona, and they're going to have corresponding FHIR objects to describe the imaging studies, potentially describe any clinical findings, and so on and so forth. And I see a question is just come in here when I say multimodality datasets. Yes, you're exactly right. Whole slide imaging is one of those. So pathology is what I mentioned. And as I said, radiation therapy, dentistry cone beam CT, dermatology, and ophthalmology. So pretty nice, pretty extensive. And I will also tell you that if any of you have exposure to other specialties that use images, and you're able to hook us up with even more samples, we're always looking for more samples and always looking to integrate those into the hackathon dataset. Now, we use Slack and we absolutely love Slack. That being said, we recognize not everybody is necessarily a fan of Slack or perhaps even has used Slack in the past. So this year, as part of our documentation, we have published a Slack beginner's guide. So if you're new to Slack, this will give you a basic idea of how to use Slack, etiquettes, hacks, etc., cool things. Now, as I mentioned, every year we try and bring something new to the table. So these items you saw on my screen were all new for this year, but I also encourage you to review additions from previous years because we've had some pretty cool additions in previous years, a lot of which are still available, and a lot of them might still be relevant to some of the work that you may want to do. So without further ado, what I want to show you are our hackathon docs. Now, do not worry about getting these links typed up because I am, as I show you these links, going to put them into the chat. I'm just finding everybody here. So every time I show you a link, it will be in the chat. I also should remind you that this session is going to be recorded, will be posted to YouTube afterwards, and we'll post the link on Slack, the website, etc. So it'll be very easy for you to find. I'm going to walk you through what our docs look like. So when you arrive to our documentation, it looks like this. On your left-hand side, you see a bunch of topics that you could explore. The one topic that I just covered is what's new in 2023. So this is everything I showed you already today with a full explanation of what is happening. I promised I would show you the list of ideas and teams curated so far. This is the list right here. So it is linked from within this document, but I will go ahead and copy this link here, put it in the chat in case anybody wants to look at it on their own screen. And teams, and it's right there. So feel free to have a look at these. If anything catches your eye, you can connect with, if you see a team lead in there, feel free to connect with that team lead. If not, feel free to connect with the person who pitched that idea, and then see if you can figure out a way to organize somebody leading that team and perhaps recruiting more team members to get some traction going with these things. Okay. In here, you're also going to find documentation, those 5-minute guides I mentioned. This is your 5-minute fire starting guide. There's one for DICOM Web. There are even more things over here. So I will let you explore this on your own. As always, if there are any questions, you can feel free to ask them here, or I'm also going to share my contact information and also methods for asking questions after the fact, should anything come up. In case this wasn't very obvious from the website, because we recognize the website can have a lot of text, this is a visual representation of basically what the hackathon looks like. So in about a couple of weeks, we are going to be getting together for something we call the brainstorming session. That brainstorming session is the unofficial start of the hackathon. Remember, this hackathon is pretty casual. If you actually wanted to start hacking between now and then, we're not really going to stop you. But the unofficial start is that brainstorming session. So that brainstorming session is a 2-hour Zoom call where we all get on and just simply geek out. We talk about all kind of healthcare and imaging problems, wish lists, and things like that. And the idea here is to provoke thought and then help people connect. So somebody may show up to this call and talk about their project about, for example, let's take Kent Hudson's idea of standardizing series descriptions. As Kent explains his idea, somebody else in the room may go, wow, this sounds really cool. I'd love to work on this. So that session is that opportunity to connect people. So then this person connects with Dr. Kent Hudson, and together they start a team and they start working on this idea, and then hopefully they'll have something to show at the end of the hackathon. So that's the brainstorming session. Once that's done, as I said, that's the unofficial start of the hackathon. So at that point, all communication moves to Slack. So really between now and then, we're kind of dormant until we get to that Zoom call. Then at that point, everything is in Slack, and I will talk about Slack in more details very soon. What we're going to do is we're going to have what we call check-in meetings every day at 12 p.m. Eastern. Those of you who are familiar with development terminology, this is kind of like a stand-up meeting. So it's a quick meeting where we go around the table, everybody could provide updates, and most importantly, if anybody is blocked, if for whatever reason you couldn't ask your question in writing on Slack, you wanted to ask it verbally, that would be our opportunity to ask a question verbally at those meetings. So these meetings are going to be taking place every day during the hackathon. So from June 7th to, well, June 16th or 15th, it's the day before. And again, I'll be posting the details for these meetings and a reminder for those every day on Slack. Now, Friday, while we're at SIIM, for those who are attending in person, we're going to have the project showcase. So this is the opportunity for everybody to be able to present their work. Now, for the record, this is not mandatory. You do not have to present your work if you don't want to. That being said, we highly encourage you to do so. And we also encourage you that it doesn't matter how little you did, how broken it is, or how prototypey it looks, even if it looks like wireframes, you're still highly encouraged to show your project at the showcase, because we want to showcase the cool ideas that people are doing. And you'd be surprised how sometimes an idea may get a very humble starts at a SIIM hackathon and then eventually ends up snowballing into something bigger past the hackathon. I don't have time to give examples, but I'll tell you that definitely has happened in the past. Now, this meetings happen it will happen at 10:30 Eastern, but because the annual meeting is happening in Texas, in Austin, Texas, we're also posting the time in Central. So it's 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. Those of you who are remote, you'll be able to connect to this meeting via Zoom. So the meeting takes place in person, but we have a bi-directional Zoom link where you can connect to watch everybody else's project presentations, as well as do your own project presentation. And then our judging panel that's going to pick winners is also half in person and half virtual. Later on that day, we would actually announce the winners, so post the project showcase. Later on that day is the SIIM conference closing general session, and as part of the session, some awards and announced general SIIM awards. Among these will be the SIIM Hackathon Awards. So you will have an opportunity to be able to tune into this session, and of course the results, we'll share them live on Slack as they're announced, so just keep an eye for that. So, general logistics. A couple of things are happening on Zoom. Everything else is on Slack. So, that brainstorming / unofficial kickoff meeting on June 7th, that is a Zoom meeting. Those checking meetings, I said every day at 12 p.m. Eastern, these are Zoom meetings. And then the project showcase is either in person if you're at SIIM or using Zoom. Everything else is on Slack. I'm going to share the invitation link for you to be able to join our Slack space in case you haven't done so. It's important that you get on Slack so you're in tune with all the announcements and all the updates. I would like to show you very quickly around Slack just so everybody here is aware. So if I bring up Slack, my computer here lets me do this. There we go. So here is Slack. We have a general channel. So that's generally a channel where I make announcements. We'll usually have channels for code heroes where you can ask questions. We do use a free version of Slack, so that's why the messages, as you can see, more than 90 days are hidden. So there hasn't really been a lot of activity since last year. But these channels in a couple of weeks are going to get a lot busier. So these are the channels for our mentors, code heroes, and domain experts. We'll explain the difference in just a moment. We also have an introductions channel. So you're highly encouraged when you join the space, take a moment and post an introduction of yourself here. This is actually very helpful because at some point as you speak to people, it might be helpful for people to be able to look up your introduction to understand your background and the way you look at things, your perspective on things. You're a developer, so you look at it from a technical point of view, or you're clinical, so you look at it from a clinical point of view, and so on and so forth. So highly encouraged to do your introductions here. And of course, what we do then is we also have channels for different teams. So as you start forming teams, you're welcome to either create a channel yourself or talk to me or one of the admins, and we'll happily create a channel where your team can hang out, you can talk amongst yourself, and so on and so forth. Now, Slack has a number of shortcuts if you've not used Slack. Like @channel is a way where you can address everybody who's hanging out with this channel. Usually for a channel like general that includes everybody in that Slack space, please leave that to me. We don't want to spam people. It's used for me to provide announcements that everybody needs to see. If you have a private team channel, you're welcome to use that with your teammates. Slack provides two of these. There's @channel, which will ping everybody without any discrimination. And there is @here, which is everybody who is online at that given moment. Again, we have a Slack beginner guide, so it's something you're going to find in that documentation I sent earlier. Feel free to take a look if you're not familiar with Slack, and if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to ask. For those of you who are coming to SIIM 2023, we are going to have physical space available. You'll often hear us refer to this as the Hackathon HQ headquarters. That space is going to be open from Wednesday to Friday. So those 3 days that the conference is running, that space will be running. So it is in the exhibit hall. This is the general layout of the exhibit hall. We are lucky to have a very prominent position here. So this is the entrance. That's where everybody comes in, and it's right to your left. So it'd be very, very hard to miss where the Hackathon HQ is. Now, if you're going to be at SIIM, there will be very good reasons why you want to be at the Hackathon headquarters. In addition to being able to meet other hackathon participants and socialize, and also having seating space, which, let's be honest, it's a premium at a show like this, there will actually be social events happening, and we're going to cover those in a few moments. So, Code Freeze, and forgive the naming here, we got a little creative, is a social where we're going to be serving ice cream, hence the name Code Freeze. It's about half an hour long. It's at that Hackathon headquarters, and you don't have to do anything, just be there. You don't need to RSVP, you don't need to pay anything, just be there at the Hackathon headquarters. If you have friends, you're welcome to invite them over as well. Hopefully we'll have enough ice cream for everybody, but that's pretty simple, low key, just to get everybody kind of mingling and talking and feeling welcomed. SIIM as a whole also hosts a welcome reception. So we have a little tangent within that welcome reception where we have a little bit of a hackathon dedicated table where people can hang out. And of course, another way that you can tell people who are part of the hackathon is when you are at SIIM in person, there will be ribbons you can pick up and add to your badge. There would be a hackathon ribbon. So if you're participating or affiliated with the hackathon in any way, please make sure you pick up that ribbon and add that to your badge. So this way, when you're at the SIIM welcome reception, people can find you and can come up to you and ask questions. I apologize, I'm just going to switch here for a second. Now, the welcome reception is happening Wednesday evening. It is happening slightly offsite at this restaurant. It does cost money because they are serving food and drinks and whatnot. It is a $25 ticket. You can get this ticket actually at multiple spots. So if you have not registered for SIIM 2023, you could do that as part of your registration. If you already have registered for SIIM 2023 but did not check that option, you actually can go back and add that option after the fact. And then last but not least, you also have the option of paying for it at the door. So if you just show up, you'll have the option of paying $25 and get in. Again, if you're attending SIIM, and we highly encourage you to do so, we'd love to see both of these functions. You'll have an opportunity to meet some great people. Here, it's going to be the mini hackathon community. And in this one, the welcome reception is going to be the greater SIIM community. And of course, the hackathon community will be very visibly present. I'd alluded to API keys, which is what you need to be able to interact with our servers and APIs. So if you've not gotten one, what you need to do is you need to sign up for an account on siim.org. It is, again, completely free to do so. You do not need to pay for a membership to use a siim.org account to request an API key. Once you've created a siim.org account, you can then proceed to the link I just posted in the chat, which you also see on my screen, to sign an agreement. So it's just a little agreement that says I'm not going to be uploading any PHI, I'm not going to be doing anything malicious, etc., etc. Once you sign the agreement, that will come to me, notify me that person X has signed the agreement. I then issue the keys manually, and I usually do that within 48 hours. Now, the keys do come from my personal email, so if you don't find your key within 48 hours, please check your spam, just in case it ended up being there. Most of the time, I'm faster than 48 hours, but I usually say 48 hours just in case you catch me over the weekend or a day when I'm really busy or something. Once you've got an API key, you need that API key to make any API request. So any HTTP request you do would have to include that. So what you do is you set an HTTP header with your API key. If you want to use this in Chrome, you have an option of using a Chrome extension for automatically adding your API key to requests. And I will show you what that looks like. So this is the Chrome extension I personally use. This API key you see on the screen is a sample. It's only used for this orientation session. So it's going to be disabled after this call, but we're going to use it today to demonstrate a number of things. So if you want to be able to use the GUIs of our DICOM web server or Fire server, you need this extension to be able to use it in a browser like Chrome. If not, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to use this in just a moment within something like Postman. Now, you don't need to write down these API endpoints. They're all posted as part of the documentation, but these are the API endpoints for Fire, DICOM Web, and Sol. Very easy to find. Again, always include an API key header in your HTTP request, whether it's HTTP or HTTPS, same difference. And again, all HTTP methods are supported. Get, post, put, all these methods are fully supported. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little quick sample in Postman for anybody who's not used it before or perhaps didn't know how to plug this in. I may not do the basic interactions with DICOM Web and Fire because I've already pointed out to the documentation, but I will show you the GUI for Fire and DICOM Web. So here's what I'm going to start by doing. I'm going to go ahead and type this up just so you see that there's no magic. So let's go to hackathon.sim.org/DICOM-web, and I'm going to ask for /studies patient name equals SIIM star. So I'm asking for all studies with a patient name of SIIM or last name of SIIM, which is really, in this case, it's the SIIM Hackathon data set is what I'm asking for. In the header section, I'm going to go ahead and add a header here that's called the API key with a value of Hackathon Orientation Session. Okay, so that's basically what I've done. I've put in my URL, I've put in my API key. You can get fancier with content types and accept headers and whatnot, but we're going to keep this super simple. Go ahead and send. With any luck, I should get back a bunch of patients. And indeed I have. So right here, this is one patient, SIIM Joe. Now this is listing studies, so we're probably going to see SIIM Joe maybe more than once, and then there's SIIM Andy and so on and so forth. So this is a very quick demo of how you could use Postman to be able to test simple interactions with the API. Now, one of my favorite features with Postman, and I should mention, by the way, that Postman has multiple layouts. So if you've just loaded Postman on your machine, the layout may look different. I like to use the two-pane view, so the side-by-side. I think the default layout is all vertical, so just FYI. Now, what I was going to say is one of my absolute favorite features of Postman is you could use Postman to tweak and fine-tune your API calls. And now once you're done, you want to be able to take that and put it into code. You just click on this code link, and now you can get your code in pretty much any language and or library you prefer. So if you're a Python person, you can just copy and paste this into your code, and this will just work. If you're somebody who, let's say, likes JavaScript as an example, right? You want to do this in jQuery. Well, this is your code right here to do this in jQuery, and so on and so forth. If you're a command line person and you want to be able to do this in curl, there's your curl command, and so on and so forth. So that's a really nice feature that allows you to take something, fine-tune it, tweak it, and then just dump it into your code if you're not overly technical. I also promised I'd show you what the GUI looks like. So let me just grab a window here, and then let's do that super quick. So our DICOM Web API is powered by none other than Orthanc. So that API is actually accessible. Again, don't need to worry about writing down the link. That's all in the documentation. But it's basically just hackathon.sim.org/VNA. You can just put VNA here and the rest will actually be filled in automatically for you. It's your typical ORthenc GUI. You can look up patients, look up studies, etc. Same thing applies to FHIR, where we use Happy. Now, FHIR actually lives at the root. So it's just, excuse me, hackathon.sim.org. And there you see Happy FHIR. And of course, Happy FHIR has this really cool feature where it actually gives you the count of the objects that exist on the server. So here, for example, if I go and search for patients, once it loads, can sometimes be a little slow. I can list all the different patients. So they also have a nice GUI that allows you to do some basic interactions as needed. So there it is. I click search. It's exceptionally slow today for some reason. So this will here return, as you can see, a bunch of patients. There's SIIM Ravi, SIIM Neela, etc. So you see the SIIM family over there. Okay, so by now you've seen basic Postman examples, how you could take Postman requests and dump them into code. Basic interactions with FHIR DICOM Web. Feel free to look at the documentation. They show you how to do basic lookups and things like that. And then you've seen what the GUI for both our FHIR and DICOM Web server look like in case you do need them. We talked about mentors, and I owe you an explanation for how we do this. So again, the two types of mentors are code heroes is the first one. So these are people that have technical expertise. They're code experts. They know architecture, software architecture. They know these kind of things really well. So they can help you with technical questions. How do I do this in JavaScript? How do I do this in Python? What's the best way to architect my application, etc. So these will be hanging out in the channel called Code Heroes. So go into that channel, ask your question, and they'll help take care of you. On the other side, we have the domain experts. So these are people that know imaging workflows really well. So for example, if you're asking, hey, at what point in the workflow does a report get written and signed? Well, that would be a question for domain experts, right? Or if some of them may also have clinical background. So like, hey, does this make sense from a clinical point of view? That again would be the place where you could ask that. And they will be hanging out in domain experts. So feel free to just go in that channel and ask your questions. One thing I'm very proud of with our hackathon is that you're going to find people from other teams hanging out in these channels and helping answer your questions. And it just goes to show that the spirit of this hackathon is less about competition and more about we're learning together, collaborating, growing, and also networking with each other. So don't be surprised if you find somebody answering your question who's not actually a mentor. You'll get plenty of help. There's no shortage of super nice people in our little bubble in this world, and you're going to find that very, very quickly. You don't need to worry about reading this whole thing, but I like to show it because we want to be transparent. This is what we send to our judges as what to consider when they pick their winners. You can read this, you could take a screenshot, read it later in your spare time, but I usually summarize this to you and the judges as the following. We don't care if their prototype is tiny. We don't care if it looks like wireframes. We don't care if it looks or breaks halfway through, it blows up halfway through the demo. What we want to see is a cool idea and somebody made an effort towards that idea. And I will tell you, we've definitely had hackathon winners in the past that perhaps didn't get as far as they would have liked, but still went on to win the hackathon. So don't feel overwhelmed if you don't get too far. We still like you to be around. We still like you to present your ideas. We still appreciate the fact that you made an effort toward a cool idea. It means a lot. All right, we talked about social media. This is a couple of quick things that you want to keep in mind. So as I said, please help us spread the word. Brag about your participation in the SIIM Hackathon. So I'm dropping a link in the chat to the social media badge that just says, hey, I'm participating in the SIIM Hackathon. After this call, please take a moment and just post on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you've got. Just tell everybody about the SIIM Hackathon. If you happen to win the hackathon, and there are multiple types of winners, we'll get into these details later. SIIM will issue you one of these badges. This is what the one from last year looks like. And again, these show up as certification badges that permanently are displayed on your LinkedIn profile and maybe other social media sites. I'm not familiar with the other ones. But yeah, something to look forward to. Now, the hackathon usually picks first, second, and third place winners, plus we have an audience choice award. So that's 4 winners. So the first 3 are chosen by the judges, by the consensus of the judges, and then the last one is the audience choice. So after or during the showcase, we ask people to vote for their favorite choice, and that's the one that proceeds to win the audience choice award. Inevitably, you're probably going to have questions or run into problems. So between now and the hackathon, you can get hold of me in 2 ways. There is my email address that you see on my screen, or even better, ping me on Slack. You may actually end up getting a much faster response on Slack than email. During the hackathon, Slack is definitely your go-to place. Ideally, you start in Code Heroes or Domain Experts. But if you're stuck, you could always use the general channel if it's something that just doesn't fit anywhere else. We definitely encourage you to create your own channel for your team. Again, if you run into problems doing that, let me know. I'll help you do that. Again, you can tag people to get their attention. Slack will then notify them. That's the whole idea of using the @tag. And remember these quote-unquote shortcuts to tag people involved. @channel is everybody within that channel. @here is everybody within the channel who is online at that given moment. There are things we encourage you to do. So of course, we highly encourage you to open source your code. And it says on GitHub. It doesn't actually have to be on GitHub. If you prefer Bitbucket or something else, by all means. Now, the wording here is worded very carefully. You're highly encouraged. You're not required. But you're definitely encouraged because a lot of people feel shy to share code. You feel vulnerable putting out your code thinking that it's not pretty. And we're here to tell you, don't worry about that. Open source it, because it doesn't matter how bad you think your code is. There's a very good chance somebody out there will find it useful. And this has happened more than once in the past. I will tell you this from experience. Now, the flip side is also true. We highly encourage you to go surfing for open source packages that you can throw into your product or prototype. So Cornerstone, OHIF, Happy, DCM4Che, the list goes on. There's a very long list of cool open source projects. Bonus points for putting these in. Mashups are always encouraged. Cool things, bring in things from TCIA or terminology like Radlex, Loink, etc. That's always cool, bonus points. And this is new for this year. ChatGPT can definitely be your friend. So don't be afraid to ask ChatGPT for help. But tell us how it goes, because we're actually curious ourselves. Most of us have used ChatGPT and have had mixed experiences with that. So if you do use it to ask it questions or ask it to generate code, share on Slack how that experience went. Everybody's interested in knowing about that. Now, I would be remiss if I forgot to thank the army, the small army, that makes this possible. Hackathon committee volunteers are people who work year-round to bring this to you, and they do an amazing work. They go above and beyond, bring crazy, amazing ideas to the table, help grow the data set, help make connections. The list goes on. SIIM staff, like Nikki, who is not on camera at this moment, they are wizards. They do so much. People don't realize how small the SIIM office is. Not many people, but they do so much work and they make it look easy. So thank you. Our mentors, many of which return year after year. We can never thank you enough. You are a big part of what makes the hackathon so friendly. And last but not least, our esteemed judges, because you bring your wisdom and expertise. You come and spare valuable time at the project showcase, ask some really good questions, provide some cool advice to the hackathon participants. You encourage them to go farther and beyond. So we thank you for all your work. With that being said, once again, thank you for being here. I absolutely hope to see you at SIIM, and almost definitely we'll see you at the hackathon. Can't wait. It's genuinely exciting. We've been doing this for such a long time. It's been awesome. And I'm happy to take any questions. I do see some chat messages here, so I'm going to start catching up on these. Thank you, everybody. Oh, well, that's a really cool one. Vikash is at Disney World and still tuned in. So Vikash, I don't know like if I should commend you or if I should be jealous. But either way, I know you did say that you missed a few things. Touch base with me afterwards, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Or we'll, as I said, we're recording this call. We will post this on YouTube. It will be available, so you could watch it. You can watch it at 2x. It'll be even more efficient than hearing me live. So that's a life hack tip I could share with you. All right. Any other questions? Happy to take any questions. Feel free to type it up into the Q&A panel or the chat panel. All right. I guess there are no questions. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Again, looking forward to working with all of you at the hackathon and hopefully see most of you at SIIM, if at all possible. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.